Hey.
Hey team, welcome back to another On the Couch. Today I'm here with Mason from Superfeast. So we're going to be talking all things medicinal mushrooms. Thank you so much for taking the time out today.
Yeah, absolute pleasure.
I would love if you could start by telling me something that you are into at the moment. So that could be a food, it could be an activity, it could be a book, just something you're digging.
So just as of yesterday, I've restarted mentoring with a really good friend of mine. He's the movement monk. So Benny is always been a mentor of mine when it comes to movement. And however, I've kind of gone through a bit of a reframing period in what's motivating me with my movement, in what I'm wanting to achieve, but more so what I'm not wanting to achieve, because I've hit the glass ceiling in terms of having goals with my physicality. I'm looking to connect on a little bit of a deeper level. So my whole movement practice, what I'm excited about right now, is just going back to basics and stopping and lying down and really connecting with my breath and really connecting with my center. And that's it. And then seeing over the next 2 weeks, I'll start that process of, can I allow my breath to lead and my body to follow and be really present and be able to formulate boundaries naturally between when I'm stepping into my business self, when I'm in that dad mode, when I'm in there, in my self-nourishing mode, because my boundaries have become a little skewed, with all family things going on as well back in Sydney. And so I'm looking to really find that center again, and then I'll start layering on my standing meditations, my dynamic movements, my deep fascial stretching from there, and hopefully with a whole new context and connection, a less agenda-based form of movement and energy practice.
So in saying that, it sounds like you've had goals with your fitness or your strength or your movement in the past, and you're exploring what they look like for you now. Do you have an idea about what that end goal looks like? So another guy I think you would really, really love is a guy called the Health and Fitness Guy. His name's Chris. He's a Brizzy boy, but he lives over in Perth now. And his whole thing around movement is around functional movement and being fit for life, healthy for life, able to move your body well. Everybody should be able to squat down and pick up something off the floor without putting your back out. And he's managed to heal himself from brain injury and multiple knee reconstructions, where he was told he would never pick up his kids again, he would never be able to run, and definitely probably not walk again.
I love stories like that. Yeah,
through just retraining his neural pathways. And his whole philosophy around training is stimulation, not annihilation. So we want to stimulate all of these neural pathways in a way that feels good for you. And his whole thing around movement is that it's completely scalable. So somebody who's 70 should be able to do the same things as somebody who's 7 in a way that's appropriate for their body. But he's super interesting. Where my question was going was, what do you think this new type of movement looks like for you? So what is actually the goal? What do you want your body to feel like or look like or be able to do?
I mean, it ties in, I've traditionally, the reason I got into tonic herbalism, medicinal mushrooms, had a lot to do with the longevity. Everything that I do in and around my movement, have done with my movement, has had that longevity aspect in mind, as with my tonic herbs is the same. I am doing this for 20 years, down the track 30, 40, 50 years, and I think about my 80 and 90 year old self a lot. Got a lot into the neuroplasticity. My mum had a stroke 8 years ago, and that got me, for her, she has complete atrophy and paralysis on one side, but looking into that, the books by Dr. Deutsch, the brain that changes itself, and that's the reason I brought lion's mane mushroom into the fold, for its neuroprotective and neurological enhancing properties. But from with that whole intention I had around longevity, around inviting herbs, movement practice, and dynamic functional movement in my everyday life. And really, trying to initiate it here in the workplace. Here we're in the podcast room at Superfeast, but we're about to get some rings up, and we're getting some kettlebells. Eventually, I'll get a rebounder. But I've really gone through those rungs of doing the ring work and doing the crawling and doing a lot of these practices to ensure that I do have a beautiful range of motion And then I just hit a glass ceiling, even around the intention of longevity, like with these taking herbs, when you have longevity in mind, of course that's a lot to do with not just putting years on your life, but life into your years. And I'm looking to explore that with a little bit more nuance. I think nuance is the key there, and getting a little bit, making sure that I'm prone to really over-identify with particular systems or particular movement patterns, with stage personas, and even something like Taoism, or an idea of longevity, and particularly ideas of like particular dietary protocols. I have over-identified, and I've done really well to come back to myself and not do that. I feel for something I think people can relate to, not having dogma and a rule set on you, and then getting in touch with that center and see what comes forth, even with my intention to share these herbs with the world and help people gain longevity, become a bit more resistant to disease and degeneration. Even on that, it still remains my core intent. However, I'm desiring nuance.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I'm at that little integer for myself where I'm not sure where it's going to go. I'm going to be doing a lot of the same things. I'll continue with my herbs, and I'll lead to moving back into my the Taoist practices and my standing meditation and exploring deep ranges of motion. But little integers in life, you need to kind of mature and find another little motivation. So definitely kind of going down that route, and hopefully embodying that neuroplasticity and opening up those neural pathways, and just making sure just little bit by little bit that I'm not aiming for something in my 80-year-old self that's socially appropriate, or something something that I've picked up along the way that was important but not so important to me anymore, and especially longevity. When you first get into tonic herbs and medicinal mushrooms, and then the energy practices and the inner cultivation practices, cultivating your essence and your kidney jing, that's the whole, that's the starting point for a lot of people. It's why I've got a herbal formula called jing, with these herbs like cordyceps in there, eucommia bark, hishil wu, and these herbs that nourish life. All tonic herbs we can go into antiquity and go into like breaking down what a tonic herb is versus a herb you're going to use to hit a symptom, or a disease, a pathology or something like that you use in those disease situations that move the body fast, and they're a bit toxic in nature. You can't use them long term. Tonic herbs, those are the herbs that have been seen to be almost safe enough for us to play around with having in our living and breathing dietary cycle, in our living and breathing expression of what we're taking to enhance and bring out our intention, whether that's for making sure that we have a nice long life, that we can move through winters without going down to these bugs, for year after year after year. Whatever that intention is, the herbs, the tonic herbs, which is coming from Taoist tradition in ancient China, we see the first time that this is really described very roughly 2,000 years ago in a Materia Medica that comes through, Shandong Materia Medica, and these are the herbs that are said to nourish life, right? And so we're nourishing life, and so Jing energy is one of the places we start, and that's the energy that lives in our kidneys. It encapsulates our physicality, our physiological function, right? So organ function, yin being our fluids, our bone, like almost our physical. The yang living in the kidneys is almost the ability, as I said, for function to occur on top of that and use that essence for something. And that has a lot to do with genetic expression. And that yin has a lot to do with bone density and bone malleability, our ability to ensure that we can maintain a strong libido and sexual vigor, because we're not exhausted and we don't have, our adrenals aren't out of sync with the rest of our body. So we have a nervous system, and this is where my personal practice sits right now. Can I remain in parasympathetic? My friend Benny, he was here yesterday. This is where I did, when I started off. My ego can go wild. I've done this so many times. I've been a yoga teacher. I've done, I've done an intensive amount of Taoist practice, but that's like, I'm so sick of, I just didn't like water off a duck's back. I was there, ready to go to the beginning. Can I just find that center and then continuously act from a parasympathetic place as much as possible? Because I do have a tendency, when I get overwhelmed, boom, I get into that other place. But that Jing energy, when you're in that place of sympathetic, if you're in that place of reliance on stimulants, when you're in that place where you're burning it at both ends without those times of cultivation being present in your life, whether it's personal practice, whether it's sleep, recovery, we leak our Jing. And we are literally, from the way of the Taoist perspective, and we've got to take all this with a grain of salt in terms of the way that we take this on, but we are leaking our life's essence. It's like we're leaking the foundations. We're cutting out the roots of our physicality, and so at some point the tree's going to be able to fall over and we're going to move on. You basically, once you've moved through that waxy Jing, boom, that's it. That's over. And so basically these herbs and what I'm trying to do with my personal practice, especially those Jing herbs, trying to nourish that life so that I can be, from the base level, be very robust, not be susceptible to stress, not be susceptible to leaking that essence.
So tell me about Superfeast and how it began. You mentioned earlier that you're from Sydney. Mullumbimby has probably got to be one of the most opposite places to Sydney that I can think of that you would be.
Kind of. It's a little gentrified now, but it's like, in terms of the vibe, it's a little bit in opposition of that franticness.
Yeah. So how did Superfeast begin? How did you go from being a kid growing up in Sydney to being a fungus guy?
And also just to be clear, because the tonic herbs, we've got a big a fungus heavy table here: lion's mane, reishi, chaga, but we've also got other herbs like barks, like euphormia, barkia, roots.
And we might talk a little bit about the different reasons why those things would be incorporated into different blends as well, and who they might be appropriate for. If people have certain symptoms or are feeling certain ways, which ones they might be, might be best suited for them.
For sure, we'll dig in. But basically, how I got into the fungal side of things, I was traveling. We were talking about Bolivia before, about the pink lakes there, in the high savannah, and it was actually in Bolivia when I was 23 where I just had one of those moments where I just got a little bit connected to my body, and acknowledging some symptoms and some fungal infection that I hadn't really looked at previously, acknowledging my exhaustion. So when I got back from that year-long trip in South America, I dove into the deep end with exploring what I'm going to be able to actually start bringing into my lifestyle to procure life, change that trajectory that I was on, because I was hit by a memory when I was on that bus in Bolivia, kind of looking down the barrel of exhaustion, the fact that I was getting sick kind of regularly, obviously didn't have much of the immune system going on. Not having the immune system, I equated when I was in year 8, I was listening to the radio and I was, there was a program on basically talking about percentages of men and women that were going to be getting cancer and diabetes, and I remember having like a cross the finger kind of feeling and mentality when it came to disease. And so when I was in Bolivia and when we got back to Australia, that was kind of, that essence was driving me. How do I uncross my fingers? Not that I feel like I'm built bulletproof, but how do I start to understand what it's going to take for me to not be susceptible to pathogens, not be susceptible to exhaustion, so that I can change my trajectory. And so I got onto reishi mushroom, which is absolutely one of the most primary tonic herbs and one of the most beautiful medicinal mushrooms, and one of the most incredible herbs for building back real strong immunity, real strong ability for your white blood cell count to get right up there in your natural killer cell macrophage function to absolutely get rocking again. Incredible mushroom. Also a Shen tonic. We have 3 treasures. We talked about Jing. Qi is that next treasure, right? That animation of ours, the mobilization, and highly regulatory temperature, keep our organs upright, and then keeping our surface immunity, really, really strong. And then it's all to do with our emotions as well, that flow of qi. But then Shen is that 3rd treasure, our mind, our spirit, our ability to take an experience from our life and allow that to develop into wisdom or something that we can use to become subjectively better people, right? For ourselves, we may have more ease in our lives. That's Shen. The whole point of tonic herbalism is to try and help people find themselves that little bit more, and not in a kind of like a pseudo 2-minute noodle spiritual person kind of way of just like, oh my gosh, I had one experience, I'm really finding myself out. No, you're like decades. So
hashtag enlightened, right?
Well, it is, and it's like, and it's interesting. I think we all know that that's not the way. But in terms of, you know, which spiritual direction do I dedicate myself to? This yogic direction, this Taoist direction, whatever it is. Basically, if you can, you know, if you can emerge through those, you know, through those labels, you can go through those paths from here to there, but make sure that you don't become over-identified. So, because remember, you've got decades and decades and decades of hopefully becoming a much more robust and beautiful person that, you know, you feel amazing being, you know? So that's Shen.
Mm-hmm.
And there are tonic herbs to tone these treasures. That's what a tonic herb is. It tones that jing and that genetic potential and that capacity to be fertile, right?
Yeah.
And have sexual vigor. There are herbs like astragalus to tone chi, our vitality, build blood, move that blood around, be animated, be bright, right? But then there are the herbs to tone Shen, our spirit. Like reishi, it's why these Shen tonics accompany meditation, deep insight, meditative practice, so that we can get a better handle on how our mind is integrating with our body. But make sure that when you're using these herbs, you might get an instant, oh, I'm feeling really relaxed and tuned in.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's about for these herbs. It's not about that instant feeling, although you do get them, and they're beautiful, they're nice. Get onto mushrooms for the first time, I feel my immune system come back online, man. This is amazing. That's where I was at. 23, getting back. How am I gonna like nourish life? I don't feel sick. I just don't feel well.
So did you just go and buy some mushrooms? Like
that's when I started trying them from all over the world.
Okay.
Extracts. Trying to get the raw stuff in, you can't really do that, right? It's hard to get fungus into Australia, and so everything getting seized in customs.
Okay.
So that's where I didn't realise it, but I was doing my beginning stages of testing how I want to be sourcing, what type of reishi and shaga medicinal mushrooms, you know, what sourcing philosophy am I going to relate to. And so I had a bunch of different types. I had organic, grown on grain, absolute shit. Organic, grown on wood, like better than wild stuff, obviously amazing. And, you know, then just like I've slowly honed into the best mushrooms I'm finding of the Chinese tonic herbs from China in high mountain or deep valley, away from any industry, very rural, called Di Dao. You get the herbs from their spiritual homeland, so that they're bringing, you know, basically they're able to grow on, if we can't get them wild, like shaga, we can get wild. So that's obviously growing on living birch. Reishi, not so sustainable wild. So we can grow it in the absolute sticks. And this is where, like in Derby Mountains, you know, it takes hours and hours and hours to get out there. And basically, with independent farmers, this is what I all discovered in the beginning. This has formed entire Superfeast philosophy when I was taking these for myself in the beginning, just to get my immune system back online. High mountain, growing on wild wood, right? With only spring water that's going into the farming area, no municipal water, absolutely no pesticides, anything like that. Small batch, independently owned, not owned by a conglomerate or a big business.
Unicorns running around.
Yeah, unicorns running around. You might as well, but it's more dragons there. Yeah, it's dragons flying around. Basically, I was blind testing these, and I was taking high doses of reishi and high doses of shaga. I was doing other things. I was going and harvesting my own spring water. Completely cleaned out my diet, of course, you know, kind of like, you know, everything in between, you know, sunbathing, all that kind of stuff, you know, deep breathing exercises. I went down the route of just becoming a yoga teacher, you know.
So what did cleaning up your diet look like? I find this very, very interesting, and you've spoken a few times about over-identifying as things, and I feel like you're edging at particularly the way that you were choosing to eat, whether that was
For me, it was raw food. That was me. I was a raw foodie.
Okay.
But I had a great time. Yeah, I was one of them, and I was in it. I was balls deep in that philosophy. And
I think for a lot of people to go to raw food or go to raw veganism or something like that, they do feel better for a period because they're eating more vegetables, which is amazing because we should all be eating more vegetables. But I think sometimes, and like you said, sometimes over-identifying puts people in a really difficult position, particularly if they're, you know, raw vegan or they're paleo or they're keto or they're carnivore, whatever it is that they then identify as that is me, that is who I am. if that doesn't serve you anymore, or your body is giving you signals that this might not be the right thing for us right now, it's really hard to pedal out of that because you attach so much of who you are with that idea or that belief, and there's so much judgment from yourself or what you perceive might be judgment from other people.
You almost need a warning sticker within the health industry that, yes, please, as I did, enter into whether it's raw foodism or carnivore or keto, and enter into this structure, but just know that this will be a phase where you learn which structures are replicating your inner organic cathedral within you that is going to eventually become your personal culture and your family's culture. Take it, walk that path, and realize at some point you're going to get to a door and it's going to time to open and let go, where you even identify in any way. Maybe you can keep some descriptive natures, and ideally if you have that healthy relationship with the diet, as I eventually feel like I did, where you take all the best that works for you and you take some dynamic ideas about the body, about nutrition, about movement, about health, whatever it is, and ultimately different dietary groups, if you're really in the deep end with it, have different worldviews, right? And they don't lead to a dynamic nature if you don't realize when it's time to go, great, I went through that experience and now I'm going to not identify. I didn't get the vegan tattoo, I didn't get the carnivore tattoo, I didn't get the caveman. Awesome. And now I can move on and make sure that during those periods, you don't create a community and a family that is completely there because you, at that time, have the same framework for seeing the world and diet and the body. It's very detrimental. Actually, that over-identification from, I was talking to my acupuncturist, Tani was talking to our acupuncturist about it, and he was running her through the ways in which that over-identification within dogma is a primary way to leak your kidney essence and your gene, right? Which you require. And you know what I see it as? Boring. You become boring as that shit when you over-identify in that way. So it's almost be very aware that yes, you can go in and you can get the most out of it. What most people do is they'll either stay there and become super fanatical, or they'll hop on that same level. What you need to do is go richer and deeper. And so you'll close that door of identifying with that particular dietary system or whatever it is at some point, most likely. Embody what's really good, great, keep on using some of those principles, and then move on to acquire something a little bit more dynamic. It's absolutely, it's necessary, and basically you need that Shen and that ability to integrate that experience and realize where you start, where you end, and where those external ideas that you have convinced yourself are the way the world is in the reality, and be ready to challenge yourself. And if you can challenge yourself, you're looking at some real longevity.
Yeah.
And maybe you have to get ready to say goodbye to some friends.
Yeah.
Because they only admire you because it's super huge right now. I think it's going to come for the carnivore community, but it's really bubbles bursting in the vegan community.
Definitely.
And I've got so many beautiful friends that are awesome, awesomely vegan, and it's not about that. It's not about being it or not it. But going I've been vegan all this time. I'm going to explore some other things, and people go, well, that's it, you're out because you don't share that worldview. Probably everyone's pretty.
You will stay in this B12 deficiency with us.
Yeah, they do. Or they go into the. Because we can have dynamic conversation. People go, you don't have to do that. You can. There are ways that you can get B12,
Sure.
Get onto the supplementing of the methylcobalamin, style,
Yeah.
You can still have that conversation, but they don't have the respect for your true nature to go and explore a new avenue. Because I'm sorry, unless you've gone, at the markets when I was pretty hard vegetarian, pretty much vegan except for beef products for years, I just didn't identify fully with it. But I would have many different types of people, but the funnest example is a couple of vegan friends that would come with me and come to me and be like, okay, spirulina, great, spirulina's got lots of iron, really, teeth are falling out, and I'm like, listen mate, I love you. There's a shitty pub right there. The only thing that's going to crack you out of this, if you go get a 2 weeks old and a steak and just do it. And just go and crack this. You need to get out of this, man. And I was kind of joking, but it's that experience. Unless you go and try and experiment a little bit more. Well, why don't? And this is really healthy. A lot of my vegan friends that have maintained veganism are doing so because they've allowed themselves that rope to go and experiment and see why. You know, what about if it's a wild meat?
Yeah.
What if I consider how the industry is changing in terms of like small batch farming? What if I really explore that? There's so many cool people doing it, you know? And so it's just in keeping that adaptability, that keeps you robust physically, because we are at a good exploratory time. Some people can make veganism work. Some people will be able to make carnivore diet work.
Sure.
Most likely for a time, but there's a slight group of people who will be able to really make it work for the long term. But, you know, we don't want to put them on the pedestal as the people that are like, you know, showing the example for the rest of the community, the rest of the dietary protocol. But at the same time, you would hope that person at least has given themselves enough of a dynamic experience to go explore other avenues and respect the other avenues and be progressive. Because people a lot of people the mind hate not being able to say, this is certain, and that's the way we're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's boring.
Yeah.
That's boring.
So was there a point that you came to when you were eating raw, mainly, you know, vegetarian?
Yeah.
What was the tipping point where you kind of went, okay, this isn't working for me anymore? And how difficult was that for you at the time to go, okay, I need to step into something else?
It was about a 2-year internal process. The time I know, because, you know, when I'm trying to justify where I'm at in my diet and my decisions, and you know, I've got like an inner monologue going in the shower, you know, and I'm talking, I'm defending myself and then defending the other side of things. Like, I don't know, I don't care if it makes me sound crazy, that's the way it was. And after a while I went, okay, you know, then that led to me, you know, more and more and more. I would argue the points that I know that I was using to justify my, you know, my worldview or anything like that, and so that backed me into a corner where I was like, I'm gonna have to go explore and change. So about took 2 years, and then started integrating a little bit of fish, and you know, and I think what maybe most people don't realize is that, you know, at that point you either have to dub yourself a failure, not many people do, or you need to completely close the door and go, right, that was a crazy time. I'm going to have to like kind of lock that away, because almost, you know, for me anyway, sometimes you can be a little bit embarrassed about the way you saw the world or how extreme you got. I'm lucky I didn't actually go and scream it from the rooftops, but a lot of people do. Yeah. And that's okay. You've got to remember that was a process we needed to go through. But remember that you are definitely entering into a new phase now. Like you're not stopping.
Yeah.
And what that phase is, I don't know. You know, it's different for everyone. But be very, you know, aware. Don't stagnate at that point. Make sure that you continue to integrate and, you know, really get in touch with what you're actually looking for out of your diet, and, you know, and don't sit in that place of justification. Because for me, I got bored. Yeah. I got very bored in the kitchen. Yeah. Right? I got very bored of the conversations I was having, and I got very bored of the myopic worldview I had. Yeah. And I don't want to be a boring person. And so I'm still exploring, you know, parts of myself which, you know, I really, you know, I want to go out, which can fly in the face of the health person, you know. But, you know, just be gentle and slow with yourself, and it'll come.
I think that's awesome. And I think it's I think part of the growth, you know, comes from acknowledging that you felt a certain way, and you said before that, you know, you can feel a bit embarrassed about it, but I don't think it's embarrassing. I think it's just a case of evolution. We've evolved. That served me for a time, it doesn't serve me anymore. I can move on from that. It's your choice to do that. And the judgment or the embarrassment actually just comes from here. It's not really from anybody else.
That's
and
right.
The other people who are judging, well, you know, jog on.
Yeah.
So Superfeast then came to be. Obviously, this was your passion. You found that it really helped your body. It helped to heal you and, you know, make you feel like you had so much more vitality.
I got back and I felt my immune system coming back online, and I could feel my metaphorical fingers uncrossing and feel that robustness emerging, which was the first time I really felt it, you know. And that's what I was talking about. When you start taking these things, you will get sometimes an immediate little kick. It took me about a month or 2 months to feel that like, my gosh, I'm loving this. But that's what, you don't get attached to that initial feeling. You know, same when I started doing like eukomia bark, primary yang jing jing he, and pishu primary yin jing he, to pour that essence back in that kidney system, help the adrenals kind of get back online, etc., etc. I felt that energy. I could feel it entering my system. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. I'm enlivened. They're not stimulants. But people ask us all the time, like, is it stimulant? I'm tweaking,
Yeah.
you know? And that's because there's been a deficiency there. You know, you're restoring life in particular organ systems, right? And particularly meridians that weren't there before. But then, after a while, we want that less of a rush of a feeling. That's not the point of them. You can definitely feel something after you take the herbs. But basically, that's where we start to procure life over months and years. If you keep up with consistency, it is actually incredible because you've you know, just for taking reishi or shaga for years and years, you know, and there's a, you know, you got to make sure that you're doing it appropriate for your body type. You have, you know, you learn, you know, to build relationships with particular herbs. You learn, you know, maybe you've worked with an acupuncturist to know which systems, you know, for you are constitutionally weak and therefore which herbs you want to be working with long term to keep you in that robust state. But over years and years, you start transforming your physicality and your energetics. And you start working with them, and you don't know where the herbal benefits start and end with, you know, you work with, you know, your psychological work or your work, you know, to keep your emotions in check, because it all starts feeding in to each other and becomes a part of this culture that's there to bring your intention for life out so that you can have, ideally, as rich a life as possible. So I was just obsessed with that. That's what this philosophy is about. It's so far apart from allopathic medicine. And allopathic medicine is so deficient in bridging people out of being a patient into their home and helping to regain that sovereignty, just to an extent. That ability for us to be aware that we can alter our immune system. It's everything you're talking about on here, whether it comes to neuroplasticity, whether it comes to our movement practice to ensure that 7-year-old can do, to an extent, what that 7-year-old can do. That's a beautiful beginning intention. And then we take it further in terms of like, building a deep relationship with our body, so it doesn't become about an external goal or an expectation that we have for ourselves at 70. It becomes like, at 70, my gosh, what if I know myself? What if I know my knees? You know, what if the core of my physical practice is with standing and walking and getting up and down off the ground? Like, imagine, you know, imagine what we've made possible for ourselves, and imagine at the core, you know, we've incorporated some of the most magical tonic herbs, which a lot of them happen to be adaptogens and have adaptogenic compounds that we have included in our diet. We've learned how to, you know, when to bring them in, when to back off, when to go hard, couple of, you know, big teaspoon. I do tablespoons, but, you know, I won't put that out there too. Yeah, I did like tablespoon a day for 2 years. Chaga and reishi. Went hard. I know those herbs, right? I really connected them. And then I went off for 2 years of reishi. It was time to go off. You know, I was feeling a bit too calm. I needed a bit more, you know, like a bit more like
spunk.
Literally, you know, like, you know, to put it like, you know, like that deer antler velvet, euphomia bark, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha has been clinically proven to up the sperm count, right? So, like, and that's important. The amount of guys that would come into because I started out in the market, so I started Superfeast in Mum's spare room in Gladesville. Because I was like, what am I going to do with my life? You know, I just finished uni. In my last year of uni, I'd studied herbalism. I was becoming a yoga teacher and didn't really want to do that. You know, it was just more of my own interest in exploration.
You had too many pairs of hemp pants and...
Yeah, I did wear the fisherman pants. It was a look for a while. But which I rocked. Because, you know, I was just in my mid-20s. I was just like living in Bondi and just, you know... And slowly grew from there, doing markets in Sydney. So doing French's Forest markets, talking to thousands of people, seeing how these tonic herbs fit into the modern world, right? And then formulating my initial blends, like the Mason's mushrooms with the, you know, the array of medicinal mushrooms in there, and the Jing formula. You know, I think where have I got? Oh, there's Jing, and I think I got like Mason somewhere. So Jing and Mason's, like formulating those so that they can fit with a modern intent to ensure that people were out of that patient mentality as much as possible, or at least slowly bridging over to that point, you know, where they are learning little aspects, what's sustainable, little aspects about themselves, you know, little aspects of how it's appropriate to incorporate medicinal mushrooms and other herbs and Jing herbs in your diet for a long-term intention. So from there, I was just obsessed. I had no idea they were going to go off. I didn't know I was going to boom. I don't really have a commercially driven bone in me. You know, I kind of like have to kind of dance with that now as the business grows. But ultimately, it was just this crazy love of the herbs and seeing what they were able to do in people, like that slow burn of watching them become integrated. And so I just went further and further into it. That was 2011 when I started, so they were not cool. Yeah. It was like pushing a boulder up a hill in terms of getting people onto one of the most life-giving red blood cell, white blood cell, Shen nourishing, nervous system calming, antiviral, liver protective herbs that there are to help bring that spiritual centeredness to the fore, so people become less of an asshole and more of, really an asshole to themselves and more of, a flourishing of their virtues. And it was like, no, mushrooms. It was at that period, so then, as of like 3-4 years ago, it starts like people becoming aware, especially particularly medicinal mushrooms, but adaptogens as well. And I've enjoyed riding that wave and trying to make sure that they don't become pedestaled, especially the way that Superfeast is approached to, ensuring that we're not cashing in on any fad, and slowing it down and making sure people realize that there's a very beautiful opportunity here. It's great that the awareness of medicinal mushrooms are coming about, what they're doing for your immune system, lion's mane, what it's doing for nerve growth factor.
It kind of looks like a brain.
Yeah. Monkey face, they call it.
Yeah.
What that's doing for nerve growth factor in the body. Do you want to hold on to that one? For synapse creation, for taking down inflammation. All these things are kind of like, a little bit of like ancient intent. It's still been clinically studied. I'm the first one to take these mushrooms and things off a pedestal and make sure that we have very reasonable expectations with them. But then it just started kind of going off. And so because I've done so many years of workshops, so many years of markets, so I've thrown parties, I've thrown cacao parties with these tree non-psychedelic medicinal mushrooms. And so people were aware of Superfeast, and I just always sourced in a very particular way that we were talking about before. It was deep down, spring water, right in the sticks, constantly working with independent farmers. It's a huge mission, and I've been able to partner with people who are doing it on that family level, right? Not big business, not commercially driven, that are able to keep those standards up to scratch, to make sure that we extract these herbs. That we take something like chaga, you can feel it. You can't just...
It's woody.
You can't
super woody.
Yeah. Chaga is interesting because it's like a fungus, but it's actually a bit of a parasitic fungus that enters into the tree. And so what we got here is almost the cancerous growth of the tree fighting and some other chemicals that are in response to immunologically fighting off the fungus that's inside. And so it's not completely identified what chaga is yet, but it's technically not a mushroom. So that's an interesting one. I like to just put that out there. But for that, we need to pressure cook that for a long time. Make sure that we've done that in alcohol, ethanol, to get those particular compounds out that are adaptogenic. Really protective of our DNA as well. Those compounds like the melanin, nourishing pineal, and then the skin, and protecting the skin, right? And as well as doing a lot of other beautiful stuff to protect us from radiation. Then extracting water as well. That gets out the beta-glucans. That's in the medicinal mushroom as well. That's the real active ingredient that everyone's really excited about, and what's clinically being sought after, these beta-glucans, long branch sugars. They bypass digestion and can enter into the bloodstream. Then start hitting immune receptors, right, that seem perfectly designed for beta-glucans and turning on the immune system. So we see natural killer cell, dendritic cells, and an array of other regulatory pathways start being turned on with medicinal mushrooms. So it means they're not actually stimulating, they're just turning on the regulatory capacity, right? And so at that point, you become way more robust immunologically. So then we've got all those compounds, and spray dry that. You're just left with an extract powder. It's good to go. And don't put any filler in it. Don't do any isolation chemically of, we want to be able to put on our label that this has 30% beta-glucans, so we're going to extract those and isolate it and then put it back in. No, whole herb, whole energetics. We want this from Changbai Mountain. Atmospherically, cosmically, pulling in that energy, very important to the Taoists, as well as living on the living birch tree that it wants to live on. And that's why
So it's the most nutritious version of itself because it's
exactly
where it's been found. So what I would love to do is I would love to go through these main things that we have here, and I want you to just give me a really quick rundown for the general punter what they might be appropriate for. Because when I first started taking medicinal mushrooms, I got really overwhelmed because there's the adaptogens, which basically can work to speed up or calm down certain things, right? So if you've got an adaptogen that's great for adrenal health, if your adrenals are working overtime, it can help to calm your adrenals. If your adrenals are a little bit sluggish, it can help to stimulate those adrenals. So adaptogens are amazing because they basically know what to do inside your body, so there's not really any right or wrong.
Yeah.
But what I found was I was like, oh my God, so this mushroom's amazing, so I need to take that, and this one's amazing, oh, but I need to take that. And I just didn't know where to stop. So I buy Mason's mushrooms because I was just like, just give me a blend, because I don't need 17 jars of things on the bench that I'm going to get overwhelmed with every day. Give me the Mason's mushrooms. I'm going to put them in my coffee every day. And for me, I love that. That's a simple process. It's part of my ritual. It's what I do. I find coffee can make me a bit buzzy and a bit jittery. I love the taste of it. So I usually only have one a day. But I do find it can make me a bit, especially if I'm feeling particularly stressed in life. I've found since adding the mushrooms to it, I don't get that.
Yeah.
It actually just sort of helps. I really enjoy my coffee.
Yeah. Nice happy accident.
Absolutely. But it doesn't give me that jitteriness or that anxious feeling that I can sometimes get, particularly if I'm feeling stressed otherwise in life. So I automatically divert to Mason's mushrooms just because I feel like I get too overwhelmed trying to work out what other things that I need. So for me, that's a good default. But I would love if you could go through the ones that we've got here and even other additional ones that you have, and just a few bullet points on what they're particularly great for and who might benefit from them.
Yeah, awesome. Like bringing up the Mason's mushrooms, I mean, that's it there, guys. Just like a little blend there. And it's got 8 mushies in there, including the chaga and the reishi, cordyceps, and lion's mane. They're like the 4 big boys that I put in there. Reishi's a big girl, so I gotta say that. That's the queen of the mushies. So if you're in that position where you're like, and that's where I was at in formulating, and tonic herbalism is traditionally done in formulas, although herbs like lion's mane and like eucommia bark, quite balanced and can be used in their individual way. And so basically that's where you can go with tonic herbalism and mushrooms. We'll go through some singles. There's a particular herb you go, something there, you know? It's something that like it enters in like, you know, astragalus, or even better, cordyceps, entering into the lung channel, into the kidney channel, really beautiful immunological, really beautiful endurance, like kind of like an athletic kind of tonic and strengthening. And when I say athletic, it's like, for athletes, but like for like 65, 70-year-olds, you know, we want that robustness. That's what Jing is about. Endurance, power, and balance in our physicality, so we can, you know, have strong bone marrow, strong bones. Like it's that kind of herb. That's what Jing herbs are. So, cordyceps. That's kind of like, that's interesting. And then you go, but and then also enters in that lung channel. You know, it can be quite useful in cases of asthma, although it's not a treatment, just maybe a background supporter. Yeah. But also in blood oxygen, blood oxygen utilization and absorption. You go, God, you know, and then you look at it. You know, you might look at a couple of other things it does immunologically, and you go, God, I want to spend some time with cordyceps. You know, I really
I'm taking cordyceps on a date. Sounds like my kind of fun guy.
It is a fun guy, and you know that comes up every now and then. That feeling, and it's worth exploring. And it might be for like a week, or it might be a year that you take that herb, and you know, maybe sometimes alone, and you get to really understand it a little bit more. That's the option, but the blend is a really nice space to enter. You know, it's like when I'm like got heaps going on, I don't have time to tune in to think about it too much. I will that's what I did this morning. Bang, Mason's mushrooms, just a big dose. I actually put some astragalus in there as well. Yeah. But that's a really good way to enter the throng. Yeah. Then, so we've kind of covered lion's mane. A lot of people getting really excited about it due to what it can, you know, potentiate in terms of the nervous system. Yeah. With that, you know, assisting with neuroplasticity and all those things that come with that nervous system and brain optimization, memory, focus, and those are great intentions to have. We should have a lifestyle that is enhancing our focus and our memory, and we need to make sure that people feel it. People get onto it. I'm just trying to make sure I calm down the expectations, even though some people go, dude, I just got off the lion's mane. It's incredible. I've tried.
I put it in my bulletproof coffee, and now I'm the CEO.
Well, and especially, that's everyone's onto that bandwagon. It's like bulletproof and CEO and optimization, and I love that they're using lion's mane, but I'm like, calm down, mate, with these external things that you need to validate the use of that herb. What benefit is going to give me? We do have people kind of like, I've been trying lion's mane for ages. Just got onto yours. Sorry, cough. I just got onto yours, and I'm feeling sharp, I'm focused, I've got more endurance when it comes to my brain function. But it doesn't work like that for everybody. You're going to make sure that you're really realistic and long term, and just using this herb to match an intent to protect your mind, protect your brain from degeneration, and that's why we use it. But that's a beautiful herb in itself, lion's mane.
Yeah. What's this funky thing that looks like a sea sponge?
Okay, so I've got tremella.
Okay.
So that's a mushroom. It does look like coral.
Looks like a loafer.
Yeah, it looks like a loofah. And so you can see it is like coral, like a bit of dry coral. So before I talk to you about this, I'll tell you, this is the herb we use. It's a lung tonic, and it nourishes the yin of the lungs. And so being a yin tonic, it helps with bringing a mucilaginous, more of like a moistening. And since the lungs are governing the skin, and there are actually beta-glucans in tremella that act like hyaluronic acid. And so we're talking about maintenance of plump moisture within the skin and the regulation of that function, as well as being a nourisher to the stomach and reducing inflammation and just regulating that mucilaginous aspect of the or need of the stomach, I should say. But the best thing is the taste. Live taste it. You're going to just pop that straight in. So this is a medicinal mushroom that you're putting into your mouth right now. There's nothing added to it whatsoever. It's just the extract. What do you reckon?
It tastes like malt.
That's it. It tastes like malt. It's like my friend is about to come out with dare I say, I don't know whether I can sell anyone yet, but whatever.
That is delicious.
But she's about to come out with like a healthy Milo. And you remember doing the Milo and malt combination? I'm like, that Milo with tremella in there, you just got like that vanilla-y, little bit of sweetness.
That is amazing. It does. It tastes like that malted milk shit you used to put in your milk.
Yeah, that's right.
But that really beautiful vanilla sort of flavour to it. Amazing.
That's that, and it's one of the most beautifying, hydrating, magical mushrooms. That's
right.
And
so that's the next one I'm buying.
Yeah, well, hang on, where's that? You can take that one. That's yours.
Thank you.
Then I think we've talked enough about reishi.
I feel like I'm going to make ice cream with this.
Yeah, that's the way you make ice cream, or you put it in as like a creaming agent if you're going to make a tonic, really gentle. So you'd make it like a hot chocolate with your Mason's mushrooms.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why I've got a frog in my throat.
It's fine.
Maybe it's because I got a toddler like coughing into my mouth.
They do that.
So it's good. It's good for your immune system, that constitution going through those little phases. Reishi I've talked about, especially nice at night or with meditation, or a nice like little sleep and a chamomile tea. Yep. I really like reishi. Eucommia bark, yang jing, build that capacity that then leads to testosterone and that robustness. This is bone strengthening though.
Yeah, okay.
Eucommia bark, bones, elasticity through the bone, really magical tonic.
Potentially also great for an older population.
Man.
Are losing bone density.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, Jing, if you're aging, like in retirement homes, we couldn't, because they're all like have their particular like regulations and their particular medicines. But Jing blend,
just eat all their white scones and
it's full on. Jing blend has that Eucommia bark, cordyceps, Hishawu, and then Rhamania, Dendrobium, and Morinda, and that is for that kidney essence, the bone strength, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's a Jing. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Live Facebook with all the mucus and all. And I'm just coming out of nowhere. I'm feeling really self-conscious right now. And then this is Shaga. We've talked about that, but
usually it's my 4-year-old running and going, Mom,
yeah.
I've done a poo.
Yay! And then everyone's like, hey, you want to see the poo? Let's see what's happening. Let's analyze it.
Sorry, gotta go. Just gotta be.
I was like that last time. My sister called when I had Aya in the bath, and Aya jumps out and says, hey, Dad, I gotta do a poo. And she's like, okay. I'm like, yes. And you showed me it was like a nice, solid, you know, and I'm like,
formed.
yeah, and I'm like, hey, Lel, do you want to see the poo? And she's like, why? And I was like, yeah, don't you want to see what your niece is doing? There's a good poo. Look at it. She's like, hey, yeah, that's like an adult poo. I don't know what I was expecting. Anyway, Shaga mushroom, beautiful, very, very powerful immune tonic. Okay. Very potent immune medicinal mushroom. And then we've got our primary chi tonics, which is astragalus root. You know, very much about vitality, spleen toning, lung toning, helping with the breath, helping with surface immunity, helping with digestion. That's that kind of function that we're looking there with astragalus. And then the only other one I've got you to try is a berry. It's called Schizandra berry. I'll actually just get you to pick one. So Schizandra berry I put in my beauty blend. I also have as an individual herb, but it's got all 5 flavors. All 5 flavors. Mostly bringing like sourness, sweet, bitter, but you know, even like, you know, it's peppery, you know.
It's say it's peppery.
You can feel its astringent nature. You can feel the pungency coming through and all that kind of. So it's like a really dynamic berry. I'm going to show you guys actually what it is.
Great digestive tonic.
Really
well. That real acidity to it.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you know, in terms of like, these are just liver magic, but also spleen magic. I mean, they're just dried berries. I don't know if you're going to really see much there, guys, but.
Kind of looks like tiny little currants.
Yeah.
Almost.
Like dried currants or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a little bright red berry. We get in this incredible orchard, like surrounded by pine and birch. There's pine growing all through it. There's mushrooms growing all over the place.
I feel like you can almost taste a bit of pine in that.
Yeah, it's like astute observation actually. Like it's a companion planting situation with that pine, and far out. Like that herb, all 5 flavors, entering all 5 major organs. You know, especially, you know, really shimmying up there, you know, shining up that liver. Shen tonic, chi tonic, jing tonic. It is one of the wonder herbs.
And so, Schizandra, is that ground up and added into something, or do you take them like that?
No, it's as an extract powder. We sell it like Schizandra on its own, or it's in a formula called Beauty Blend, which is about getting into that spleen, lung, liver function and getting it really, you know, revitalized, so that then we can exude that, you know, that real, you know, that beautiful nail, hair, skin, you know, all that kind of stuff, that twinkle in the eye. Yeah, that's the beauty blend, and then you can add the tremella into the beauty blend. Do that whole thing. Have that as like a beauty shot or something with some like.
How old are you?
You know, do you want me to like 70? No, like 30, 33.
You have got amazing skin.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I do a lot. I actually, well.
A face mask.
No, I guess I don't do any of that, and I feel like I'm kind of at with the business, toddler, all the family stuff. I feel like I haven't really been doing as much as I used to do, like my deep skin scrubs and all that kind of stuff. But internally, I do a lot.
Yeah.
You know, especially with these herbs. Every day, tremella's in my tonics as the cream. I'm making a hot chocolate or a coffee, or not really making coffee that much, but I'll put a big teaspoon in there as the creaming agent. Yeah. And so that kind of stuff, you know, if you're keeping your lung yin healthy, if your liver is flowing, and you're doing it through diet and herbs without having to go through like deep cleanses all the time in order to get that kind of result, you're kind of on the money. And you know, that's where like I feel my skin's still pretty happy.
Well, I think our skin is a reflection of our inside, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you know, so many people, you see them and they're aging beautifully because they nourish themselves well from the inside. And if your skin's shitty, it's a reflection of what's going on the inside. I think so much of the time we look at, you know, dermatitis and eczema and psoriasis and all these sorts of things, and people are slapping topical creams on it.
And steroids and
I'm
everything.
like, no, it's what's inside. Like there's gut stuff going on, or there's foods you're eating are causing this inflammation. Your skin is your biggest organ of detoxification. And if you're not putting the right stuff in, your body's just going to shoot it out on the outside. It's trying to tell you, yo, fucker, listen, this shit that's going in is not right.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it ever feels overwhelming, I mean, like, going and seeing a good acupuncturist or TCM doctor that can tell you, what deficiency is going on, or, if there's a build-up or a blockage or a particular sick wind or pathology going on, that they might be able to help you out and give you some feedback of what's going on in your constitution, get you on some, more aggressive herbs to move that on, even if you're doing that with a naturopath as well. And then at some point, you're going to need to bridge over and do it in your life. And although these tonic herbs can be used clinically in that way, it's when you're really ready to take it, into your own hands. If it's, when it's not as severe, when the symptoms aren't gnarly, bang, you're in, and you can start like
this is
shifting.
maintenance.
You shift. It is. I mean, I say that's our direct intention. Don't get me wrong. People have used them to shift some absolutely major stuff. But it's definitely maintenance is the intention, or the procurement of life.
Yeah.
You want to tone that life, and you want to tone your organ function with them.
So how is this different to a lot of brands? So I feel like medicinal mushrooms are kind of the new black at the moment. They're definitely sort of coming into their own and coming into the light. And there's a lot of companies that will just jump on the medicinal mushroom bandwagon because, it's going to make them money because they're cool right now. Obviously, there's some brands that do a really great job, and you've talked already about the sourcing that you go through, which is going to be a major difference for you to, a lot of other brands. What else is it that you guys do different, and what would people look for if they are looking to get medicinal mushrooms? So ideally, they want to buy Superfeast because they're the best, but if they can't get their hands on them, what is important to look for?
First thing, you want the mushrooms grown on wood, native food source, not grain, not coffee, anything like that. Although there's like good operations in recycling coffee grounds and those kinds of things growing them. A lot of companies are going to be growing their mushrooms on grain because it's easy to get an organic certification.
Kind of like cows, really.
Exactly. It's exactly like cows. It's exactly like feeding a cow grain versus it's native food grass. You just don't do it to a medicinal mushroom. You're going to get grain through that product, and you're going to get starch through that product. So that's a no. With medicinal mushroom sourcing as well, some people like to have that organic certification to know that next step is being adhered to, that they've got like a little bit of a bigger operation, or bigger business is like looking over it, and they've gone through the loopholes to get an organic certification. That's the next step that people might like, and at least it shows that there's no additional pesticides or anything going on. For us, in terms of other companies jumping on the bandwagon, I think I was talking to you before. There's a couple of companies that were doing it before it was trendy, and I'm friends with them. We still chat to one another. And if you can't do that as a medicinal mushroom or tonic herb company, if you can, we have friendly competition. I do like, but an obsession around competition and dominating and grabbing parts of the market for yourself. If that, and I think a lot of the, I call the 2-minute noodle businesses that are going to start jumping onto it now, they have that mentality. They obviously, they don't get it. So you want to know who owns the company that you're buying off. I own 100% of Superfeast, and many people want to invest in Superfeast, but I won't do that. I'm going to keep it independent, I want my farmers independent. And so that's another thing I really like. I like supporting these little villages, and I like also my partners in terms of finding the farms we work with and working with people and farmers who are doing things right and are offering us bits of land on, for us to then, help them grow a crop in the style of DDOW. So we know that they've got particular, that they're away from industry, the water's clean, no radiation in the area, which we test with a Geiger counter. We know that it's rural, we know that it's cosmologically lined up in that area with what in antiquity the herbalists would say is necessary to grow that dongguai, or to grow that eucommia bark, or whatever that is. And we know that it's in the valley area that's going to create the most powerful, tonic herb with the most constituents as possible to give us that best chance to have that most potent, robust, energetically robust herb that has the gene, has the chi, has the shen. And for us, we do stay robust. That's why we don't pay for someone to come out and do an organic certification on this particular farm, because then it's the usage of that farm is, you know, an absolute necessity because you've gone and you've put that cost out, and the independent farmers can't do that. We don't work with farmers that have a blanket parent company that are doing that because they've got financial interest in having organic certification. We go beyond that organic, make sure that we've ticked off all those boxes, and you can see I've done live from the farms to show people the area, to show that there's weeds and mushrooms growing throughout, as well as showing you that it's been tested for pesticides 3 times. So you can see there's no pesticides because there's weeds everywhere and mushrooms everywhere. They wouldn't grow if that was the case. And then we've tested 3 times before it goes to the market. And for heavy metals when it comes to medicinal mushrooms. And for aflatoxins. And we're working with people and farmers who know, you know, not just the testing is what we want, that they know how important, that they respect the herb, the storage, right? The way we're transporting, you know, ensuring that there's no moisture, not just to make sure that the crop doesn't get ruined, but, you know, no little area gets skipped, not using an organic fungicide on the straw hut in which we're growing the lion's mane, right? Which is hard to do. So you need to go and grow in a particular area, which is very, very inconvenient, so that it gets cold enough so that you don't have fungus growing. Then with that lion's mane, for instance, right? Using only well water, so you have to go somewhere where there's a well, because we're not using tap water. And then only spraying that water over those huts, right? Not directly on the bags that we're growing the lion's mane, on the oak chips, so that they have to work and become adaptogenic in themselves to go out, but then doing it in an area where you don't have to use a fungicide. Those are the kinds of things that you want to be looking at. And you'll see other companies coming on now saying, we're DDAO, we source from the spiritual homeland. And they kind of think that you just tick a couple of boxes and then you can say DDAO. But what you want to be looking out for is, you know, DDAO falls into an overarching way that you yourself are living life. The way that the farmer is living life. It has a lot to do with the connection with the herb, as well as making these little minute adjustments as you go along to ensure that you're getting closer and closer and closer to the wild thing and respecting the herb and growing it the way that it wants to grow, so they can have that full energetic capacity. And so it's a very long-term, you know, you've got to have the way of living that is aligned with DDAO in order to say that this is DDAO. There's a brand over in the States called Dragon Herbs, Ron Teagarden. It's very influential for me. Like he is like he's taught me what it means to walk that path of sourcing herbs DDAO. And when I met him, I told him where I was at, and I'm like, you know, company's starting to kind of go a little bit, you know, I feel this connection this way about the herbs. This is how I want to use them, this is how I want to share them with the community, and I don't care. You know, people like ask about China. I'm like, of course I'm going to get Chinese tonic herbs from China. It's the only way to do it. And it's the only place I'd want to be doing it. As well as like, you know, like wanting to go beyond that organic paradigm, although I love it in foods and stuff. But and he was like, mate, you get it. You double down and stick with it. And I, you know, was never not going to. I was just curious on it. But we talked about it, and we talked about, you know, these little nuanced differentiations in terms of keeping 100% control of your sourcing. And, you know, even if I sold the business, people could keep the checklist of DDAO there, but the things would slip. And that's the thing. There are things that slip you don't know to ask about. Not to say that you have to be paranoid about every other company or anything like that. In Australia especially, it's pretty good. We got it pretty good in Australia. But the people will start jumping on board. And, you know, although it might not be a dangerous product, you know, especially if it's grown on wood, you know, that's kind of fine. You're like, okay, it might not be a dangerous product, it's fine to kind of take. But it's going to be missing a lot of the time, that je ne sais quoi, especially because we're only growing to an extent that we cannot budge one iota on our sourcing philosophy.
So how do you upscale? So obviously when Superfeast is, you know, this global phenomenon and everybody wants your product, how do you upscale?
I just don't think it'll happen. I just don't think like there's other companies, there's other
businessman ever.
Yeah. We're a part of an ecosystem of other people doing this same work, and some people are meant to be that huge wide net. And get the fast consumer. And we're just not. And we develop long-term relationships. People come in, people come out. We're growing steadily. And
is that scalable though? Like, do the farms that you are sourcing from, do they have the ability to scale with you as you grow?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, basically I I have my partners that I work with, and they help, them via specifications. We help find the farms, and slowly we can be like, we're growing at this rate, very slowly. So, and we have this kind of projection that we're going at this rate.
Yeah.
And so, but then what's going on is people like the reishi farmer, right? Mr. Lee, who I met last year in October, he was telling me via translator, because my Mandarin's not there yet, that he has been teaching. He lives up in the Derby Mountains, right? And so that Derby Mountain is very particular because of the water source, beautiful for growing reishi, and right out on the sticks, just right, perfect moisture in the air. It's really robust and hard conditions for the reishi to grow in, so it makes a quality product. It makes a DDAO product, right? He's teaching other people within his village how to grow in this DDAO style, right? And doing it in a way to make sure that you circulate the platforms in which you grow the reishi, because otherwise you decimate the soil.
Yeah.
It's easy to grow organic and closer to the factory reishi in the same spot where you don't actually rotate it, but then you're not leaving the land better than you found it.
Yeah.
Therefore it's not DDAO.
Yeah.
These little nuances and these little things, and so we've constantly got a team going and finding people doing it right and in a way that's sustainable.
How long do they take to grow?
It really depends. I mean, it's going to be at least 7 years for a wild shaga to grow. So it's very important to work with people who
Jesus Christ, that is a long time.
Yeah, and reishi is going to have more of a shorter cycle. A lot of the medicinal mushrooms, like lion's mane, will be a 1 year cycle, so it'll just take one season.
Yeah.
Most likely from spring to the end of the year up in the northern hemisphere. Same with tremella, 1 year cycle. But for the euphormia bark, the trees have to be at least 10 years old. And they're up to 50 years old.
Yeah.
The astragalus needs to be at least 3 to 5 years old. There's very particular specifications to make sure that it's solidified. Yeah, exactly, and it's settled in, and the personality of that herb can come through.
That is amazing. I feel like we have talked about so much. Is there anything you would like to talk about or mention or share with people before we finish up?
Look, I just think that you definitely should lead with, hey, what's my health intention long term? Am I dealing with some exhaustion? Maybe I'll enter with some Jing. Am I really working on my skin? All right, cool. Maybe tremella and schizandra. And as soon as you can, try and just inquire into that deeper intention that you have long term, and see if you can find a place to take tonic herbs for the next couple of decades. See if that works for you. If you're not feeling it, don't obviously. But I'm aware, most people can't go out and forage these adaptogens and tonic herbs, include these medicinals in their diet. So I'm trying to do the next best thing. Go and find the most, ancient, verified through the ancient herbalists and medicine men and women. See if you can find a place for that to be long-term in your diet.
Yeah.
Don't buy into the fad. Buy into the reality of what these tonics are, and the fact that they have been used for many thousands of years, and this is a very primordial human thing to take herbal medicinals that are gentle. You don't have to do it every day. You don't have to not do it every day. You are going to have to find a dynamic way to do it. You can start out with I take a quarter teaspoon, I slowly build to a half teaspoon, maybe a teaspoon, depending on my constitution. I can do it in hot water, just with a bit of milk, and do it like a tea, or I can add it to hot chocolate, or I add it to smoothie, or I can add Mason's mushrooms to a stock or a miso or a soup, give it to the whole family, Trojan horse it in that way. Okay, cool, I'm getting my head around it, I'm starting to get comfortable with it, and then bridge it into that long-term use, bridge it into your family, culture, and into your kitchen apothecary, so you can get that long-term use.
I whack it into everything. So like I said, I put it in my coffee in the morning, but if I'm making bliss balls, I will wax them in there. Anything that I'm making, just pops them in, just to get a bit of extra
Absolutely.
jazz in there.
Look, you get those medicinal mushrooms in, and if you do them daily, you have got an activation of white blood cells and natural killer cells and macrophages that is pretty impressive, and keeps the vitality up and keeps the immunity up, and very important for people in this day and age to move out of that traditional Western culture where it's a flabby white bread Western immune system, and start getting more of a robust steely intelligent and integrated immune system. And one of the ways that we're finding that we can do this at the moment is with medicinal mushrooms. Happen to be a very potent way as well.
Yeah. Do you give them to your child?
I do. Yeah. She's 2. She's had like reishi since she was about 6 months old.
Yeah.
But yeah, this morning, it's for her. You know, it's a bit of a spleen thing for me as well at the moment. So a lot of poria, which I don't have individually, but it's in the Mason's mushrooms. Poria just for general longevity of water metabolism, as well as astragalus, which the Taoists said as a root is to cure the 100 ills of childhood, and as well as like a lung robust, like a surface immune tonic. And as well, I've been doing a little bit of cordyceps for her, the mild expectorant. She's just trying to, she's having a little bit of a genetic immune upgrade. She's saying, had a little bit of a cough, robust as anything, but doing that. So I've just got some cordyceps in there to support that, since she's not in the acute stage of infection.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Mason. This has been
absolutely
awesome.
It's been fun.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in, gang.